together, thousands strong, march toward the strongholds.
This skeleton Enderman thing is completely frozen in this shot. Also, the lighting here is really confusing. There aren't any visible light sources in this shot, but there's a bunch of miscellaneous shadows that imply there are dim lights around them. But the actual lights being used, sea lanterns to be specific, technically give off way more light than we see here in this shot. Look here, the indent in this wall should be lit immensely. Also, the flat texture on that crown makes it look like a cheap replica from Burger King.
Soon will the end be raised to a blazing ruin.
I only wish to protect the artifacts.
Despite our protagonist, the Queen, having an opposable mouth rig, the end person here, named Vordis the Dragon Seer, Vord for short, doesn't have a moving mouth rig. He's just got a black beard and a black void for a mouth. The Enderman behind Vord is completely still for this entire shot. The Queen's eyes aren't glowing nearly as much as the others.
Defeat is certain. What do you intend?
This war is not ours to win.
Not having mouth audio synced animation leads to a lot of static shots like this, where nothing is really happening except the camera jolting around the characters while they stare at each other. The lighting doesn't seem to have ambient occlusion, causing everything to look very flat.
Hope lies not in the ashes of the End City, but in our successor, in the Overworld, the last Ender Watcher.
The team behind this decided, hey, let's put our credits in the beginning of the video and the opening like this is Disney from the 1950s. Not only does it make it more distracting, but it's not being used as it should be. Properly used, the text should be in scenic establishing shots of the movie, with music or narration over it. That way the viewer could take time to focus on the names. Here, the text gets in the way, and vice versa. The gap in between this skeleton's bones are black instead of transparent. Also, those ender chests in the background aren't to scale with the rest of the blocks, and it's bothering me.
I dare challenge this fate. We are all that stands against this mighty oppressor.
Skeletor's arm and torso are Z-fighting with each other.
Together, we will fight valiantly to the last Enderman.
What a lovely speech, Your Highness. Too bad it was drowned out by the music fading in. Also, this was 45 seconds of sheer dialogue, with the Queen throwing her arms around. The shared walk cycle these zombie pigmen have looks very awkward. For one, everything is stiff and doesn't flow very well. For second, their upper arms are all contracting upwards on every step, when they should be swinging. And lastly, their heads have no offset from their torsos. It just follows it. That shield is floating against that pigman's arm. His sword does clip into his entire arm, so maybe the shield has a spike that's going straight through his arm.
Not my soul, the future I'm defending.
This lighting looks like a 2D element they slapped under a plate of the sorcerer, and it's completely flat. After the sorcerer's lightning strike, their arms blur for a moment. Also, their arms' F-curves cause it to jolt forward. This shot looks like the Queen's eyes should be closed, but they're open just slightly for some reason. Our little skeleton demon child is floating in this scene. Again with the 2D elements. Just gonna go ahead and add 5 sins for the rest in this video. This glow distortion effect was added in post, above the black bars layer. That means the highlights at the top of the scene expand over the bars. Skeleton boy snaps up, freezes, gets a vibrate tag applied to him, and then snaps down. The shouting coming from the pigmen disappears and then reappears when it cuts back to the Enderman. The Queen freezes completely after lunging forward. Maybe this is the real Frozen 2. Everyone waits here until the Nether Army is just about on top of them. I'm sorry, but that just seems like poor planning on the Ender Army's part. The sword glow gives this weird edge glow effect to anything that passes in front of it. All these Endermen are just clipping straight through Vord here. The animators just rotated the main controller of the dragon for the spin move. They didn't even bother to animate anything else. The legs just distort until the dragon makes a full 360. Some of the pigmen have a delayed response to the dragon knocking them over. Cinema 4D Explode Effector. The sorcerer's lightning is now apparently blue, instead of the red coloring it had before. The particles don't quite track the dragon properly as it falls. Instead of war vibes, this just gives me diggy diggy hole vibes. I think this whole video needs a vibe check. This creature that can teleport decides to stand there and cower instead of, teleporting away. Characters don't feel like they truly interact with each other, and this is a great example as to why, despite this Skeletor's fists moving, the queen barely reacts. These are two completely different trajectories this girl was sent in. Also, I'm pretty sure that if all it took was one gas fireball to kill Vord, I almost guaranteed that getting absolutely thrashed and then personally lit on fire would have taken her out. The queen's arms aren't colliding with the ground. And this is where I'm gonna send all the clipping, because that fall caused major migraines for that Skeletor, as it did just clip halfway into the ground, and I hate the idea of these actors getting hurt from their imaginary work. I can't honestly tell if those bodies are shattered into pieces or half buried. If they are buried, how are they buried in solid stone? Where did this ender chest come from? It wasn't anywhere in the previous shots. These last two fights have had very heavy JoJo's Bizarre Adventure influences, with the aura, the point, and the "oh, you're approaching me" moment. I don't have a problem with them using these, it's just that they don't really fit in. The flurry of punches doesn't fit with the style of the animation, and the point, as well as the Walmart brand Dio. I'm walking towards an entity that may just kill me, but still gotta sway my hips. Again, the queen can teleport. We saw her using it to absolutely trash Skeletor just a couple minutes prior. Why wouldn't she do that now? Why would you intentionally use a weapon that puts you in close quarters when your enemy has a weapon with longer range? Finally, a Minecraft animation that has blood when a character gets hit. I would take a sin off, but plenty of other characters get hurt, and not once does blood happen until this instance, so I'm afraid I'm gonna have to sin it. The queen's right eye doesn't fully close here. Also, the queen's body oddly rises up from the ground, slightly before the scene changes. Our demon child's arm gets motion blurred out of existence for a frame or two. Also worth mentioning that it never actually touches the chest when it picks it up. The queen has the thickest plot armor known to mankind. She has survived being punched or kicked 8 times, thrown into the ground, or a building thrice, set on fire, been hit with a magic explosion, and, oh right, stabbed 4 times now, and yet she's still alive. In conclusion, this animation was very interesting. It continues the Witherheart story with interesting character designs, such as the Ender skeleton creature here, and the Sorcerer. Although the main animation could use some work in terms of tracking, lighting, and clipping, it was still a great watch overall. Good sets, great designs, and a good story.
It's Mr. Joestar!
My name's Dan and I'm a pig man hanging with my pig man.